Next up, we have a basketball presentation. We have Draft Smart, identifying hidden value in WNBA expansion. We have Isabella Ferrandiz from Syracuse University and Jada Douthit from Winston-Salem State University. So, let me run a moment to switch over the slides. And then...
Breaking news, the WNBA is set to expand up to 18 teams by the 2030 season. With this new upcoming season, we have the Toronto and Portland teams coming up. This is Draft Smart, identifying hidden value in the WNBA expansion. I am Isabella Ferrandiz.
I'm Jada Douthit. For our project, we focus on how to grow and expand the WNBA league by focusing on the upcoming expansion drafts in 26 and 27. And we explored the opportunity to build a brand new roster from players across the league currently. And we asked ourselves, how can we use player performance and salary to optimize the expansion draft strategy? So for our data, we web scraped from 3 sites, Her Hoop Stats, Sport Track, and Basketball Reference, to gather data from 23 to 25 WNBA season that include the demographic info such as name, age, and the position of the players, the performance metrics such as player efficiency rating, known as PER, the minutes played, the wins shared, and also the contract and salary information of the players. For our ADA, we explored the relationship between the PER and the salary of the players. And we set different ranges, such as the rookie range. We set different ranges, such as the rookie range, which players play 1 to 2 years. And we also explored the max contract and supermax contract. As you can see in this graph, there are several players that have high player efficiency rating, but the salary does not reflect that.
So we decided to model salary more. 3 key variables that we used was the player efficiency rating as a multi-year rating with a decay, meaning that the player efficiency rating for the 2025 season is going to hold more weight compared to the player efficiency rating in 2024 and then in 2023. We also used age and the proportion of the current team salary cap that the player holds. And so we ran a 5-fold cross validation on these 5 models, on XGBoost model, our polynomial linear model, and lasso and ridge regression. And we evaluated them based on the root mean squared error. And we decided to go with our XGBoost model as it had the lowest root mean squared error. So because the WNBA doesn't have previous data on who was protected or unprotected in the past expansion drafts, that data isn't made public to us. Unlike in other leagues like the MLS, which is a soccer league, they do make that data available when they have their expansion drafts. We aren't able to do a regression because there is no past data on who was ever protected or who was ever unprotected. So our way of predicting of who would be protected or unprotected in the upcoming expansion draft was to create a heuristic player ranking formula using 4 key metrics. We used a weighted PER and a weighted win shares. Similar to the salary model as we had before. The weight has more weight on the current and most recent performance, and the 2023 and 2024 year has less weight, as we think teams are going to want to emphasize a player's most recent performance. Then we use contract years remaining because we're assuming that teams are going to want to have to protect players that they have more control over contracts, and then their age with a penalty for players who are over 35, with the assumption that teams are going to want to protect players who are younger because of the potential for growth. So what this formula did was that it gave a player within their team a score, and it ranked them to see who had the highest score and had the least score. And then the players who were the top 5 on each team were labeled to be protected, and the other players who were under those top 5 ranked were unprotected. We decided to protect the top 5 players because since it's 2 new teams that are coming to the expansion draft this year, we're assuming that that's the rules. They're going to be only able to protect 5. In previous expansion draft rules for the WNBA, teams were allowed to protect up to 6, but we're assuming that now it's going to be 5. They have not come out with the rules yet for the WNBA expansion draft, so these are just assumptions of rules that we think they're going to make with 2 new teams coming in. So what our formula to see who was protected or who was unprotected predicted for the Las Vegas Aces was that A'ja Wilson was protected, and so was Jackie Young. And then our unprotected players were players like Dana Evans and Kia Stokes.
With that being said, we created a graph that showed the actual salary of these players compared to the predicted salary of which they should be making. And with that, we saw which players had a positive residuals to represent that they're being undervalued and not compensated enough from their teams. So we combined the undervalued players with the predicted unprotected players to make our final decisions.
So this is a list of recommendations that we have for players who should be on the lookout for the draft. This is not a roster that we're saying these teams should pick. This is just recommendations that we made based off players that were undervalued and unprotected. The way we went about creating this list was that we got the list of players who were unprotected and we separated each player within their respective position groups. So we separated a list of guards, forwards, and centers. And then within those positions, we looked at the players and prioritized players that were mostly undervalued. And so we chose five guards, 3 forwards, and 3 centers. Per past WNBA expansion draft rules, you're only allowed to choose one unrestricted free agent. So our one unrestricted free agent that we had chosen to look out for was Kayla McBride. She was unprotected and a really good player as she has experience playing. However, after the WNBA season had ended and we decided to rerun our model because our previous results were during the summer when we had done the project. After the WNBA had ended, we reran our formula to see if there was any changes of players who were being unprotected, whom we had chosen to be protected. And so Kayla McBride, who we had said before during the summer was going to be unprotected, now became protected. A reason for this could be because one of her teammates got injured during the season. So she had to step up. She had a really good performance with her shooting. She was doing really good, 8 for 8 in one of her games from the 3. So that could be a reason as to why she was protected. Another player on our list who was deemed to be unprotected that became unprotected was Lee from the Dallas Wings. She started getting more minutes towards the end of the season, and her defensive rating increased as she was getting more time and she was getting more rebounds.
During our research process, we did face limitations. One of the limitations being, as mentioned before, past WNBA expansion draft data not being publicly made available. And also, during this research process, it was during the WNBA season, so we were dealing with constant roster changes due to waivers, bought outs, players leaving to go overseas, and more reasons. And also there were external factors that were not captured during this research process too.
So to conclude with our formula, it doesn't account for everything. Obviously, players have their own, coaches have their own strategies when it comes to building a roster. Some coaches may want players who are younger, especially when it's an expansion team and they have to create a team from scratch. They may want younger players, or other coaches may value older players. So our formula, what it had done, it valued more players who were younger and who teams had contract over. But obviously, other coaches may have different philosophies when it comes to protecting their players. And with this new expansion draft, the one that we're coming into, the CBA, which is a collective bargaining agreement, it ends this year. So a lot of players are becoming unrestricted free agents. So it's interesting to see how the rules may change for this expansion draft. As past rules, teams are only able to select one unrestricted free agent. However, this year, more than half the league are unrestricted free agents. So we're hoping to see when they come out with these rules of what the expansion draft is going to go. And we're excited to see how the draft goes. Hopefully some players on our recommendations list end up in a new team this year. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I just want to also shout out to Ella, who's the other member of the group who couldn't make it in person today, and also James Hyman, who is the client for this project from the Connecticut Sun. We do have time for some questions, so please raise your hands if you have any questions for the group.
Oh, shoot. What was it? Somebody else go first. I forgot. Yeah.
All right, anyone else want to go? Questions for the group? All right, there's one back there.
I know you guys vaguely talked on how much change happens in the WNBA. So how would you keep continuing to update this model, especially as change happens, and especially as the whole CBA thing is in flux? Will that account for anything you guys do?
So we knew that we're going to have a lot of limitations when coming into this. So especially with the collective bargaining agreement ending, a lot of players are going to be unrestricted free agents. So the thing about this is that the WNBA expansion draft, they don't come out with the rules until a couple of days ahead of time. Also, these teams don't even get the unprotected and protected list until like 10 days before the draft happens. So you don't really know what players are going to be unprotected. Well, the teams that are making the expansion teams, they don't really know that information until 10 days before. So it's really hard for them to create a model up ahead of time because you really don't get like enough information, and the WNBA doesn't give you enough information to create a model that well. I don't know if that answers what you said.
Did you guys consider testing your model on like the Valkyries expansion this past year?
Yeah, so when we were creating the formula, we were just trying to see like how it played out with the Valkyries just to like test it. And it was right. All the players that were selected for the Valkyries were unprotected from our formula. So it made.
Other questions? Sam, are there any questions in Steinberg over there?
Yes, we do have a question over in Steinberg.
All right.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I'm curious about the weights you used in your heuristics and how you selected sort of how to weight each element that you put in.
Yes. So when we were coming up with those weights on those different formulas, we had run iterations over like 200 iterations, giving different weight combinations. And the different combinations, it ended up giving a player a whole number of like what is a probability that they would be protected. So that's how we came up with those weights. It was just that formula was one of the formulas that had the best weight combination that gave the most highest predicted probability that a player would be protected.
All right. Other questions? No more questions. So let's thank the group again. Great job.